Now, another person who no doubt knows all about all of this is Niki Bezzant. She's also a household name, at least in New Zealand. She's the founding editor and the editor-at-large now of the Healthy Food Guide. She's also gaining a profile generally for her no-nonsense approach in this area and perfect handling of the media, in my opinion. So welcome to you, Niki.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. It's lovely to be here. I am a big admirer of Sarah's, and I think she and I have quite a lot in common. Like Sarah, I am not a scientist, but like her, I do consider myself to be a translator. So what I spend my time doing is actually translating the things that you guys with your big brains do into something that the average person can understand, and something that the average person ideally can apply to their life. I'm a little bit jealous of Sarah's long stories that she gets to do, because I don't really get to do that, but yeah. I'm here to talk today about social media, actually. And it's very timely. Once upon a time, and there'll be people in this audience who will remember this, there was a time when the word selfie didn't exist, and there was a time that if you wanted a picture of yourself, you actually had to ask a passing stranger to take it. So there's one of me back in the 90s in New York, and taken in exactly that way. Why are you laughing? That's me. You know, I mean, you did run the risk of losing your camera, having it nicked, but you also ran the risk of bumping into and having an interesting conversation with a stranger. Now, of course, that has all changed, and there is really not a room in someone's house that we can't get into by means of a selfie. They're in the gym, they're in the bathroom, they're in the bedroom. They're everywhere. And this is a behaviour change that social media has wrought. It's hard to imagine a time before it, but it did exist. And the same goes with food. Once upon a time, the only images of food that we saw were professionally photographed and professionally styled, like those ones at the top, which I have done. And you know, it was in magazines, it was in print form, and recipe books, of course, as we've talked about today. Now it's completely different, and it's actually sort of flipped around to the point where the food is being designed to be Instagrammed. You know, you're getting food that's the dishes are designed to be photographed for social media. So some of that is great, and I have to say up front that I do love social media. I mean, I've tweeted today, I've posted on Instagram, I've posted on Facebook. I love social media for the things that it is good for. I post, as some of you will know, I post obviously pictures of my food. That's really important to me. I post pictures of my sewing projects. I've connected with communities of people who have got similar interests, and that is all really, really good. It can be a hugely powerful and positive force in our lives. But social media also affects us in ways that are not trivial. We have been talking about the media. It is tough out there in mainstream media. This is a UK slide. This is the sales of magazines since 2005. The picture is really the same here in New Zealand, and this is extremely timely for me because, as some of you may know, a couple of days ago, Healthy Food Guide announced that the November issue will be the last issue in print. Yeah, which is really sad, but that is a sign of the times. This is what is happening out there in media. Healthy Food Guide is the top-selling food magazine still, and it can't survive in this market. And that is because of a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the impact of digital media can't be underestimated. A lot of the ad revenue now is going straight to Google and straight to Facebook. You know, people are changing their behaviour. Think about the last time that you actually bought a print magazine. Probably was quite a long time ago, I'm guessing. People are not necessarily willing to pay for quality content anymore, or they don't think they have to. And it's across the world. I mean, Marie Claire just closed down last week in the UK. There is a huge decline in professionally curated content. So just remember this time, because we might look back on the last 10 or 15 years. Healthy Food Guide's been a big part of my life for the last 15 years. We might look back on that time as a golden age, when we had a mainstream magazine that was based on evidence-based nutrition. Social media has a big impact on how we consume news, and of course, science. Sarah is right, there is huge confusion out there about how and what to eat to be healthy, and she is also right that no one believes what they read. And right now I have to say I feel like perhaps people don't really care about science and about truth and about evidence, and it's hard not to place a lot of the blame for that on social media, because social media is filled with a lot of stuff that you and I would call nonsense. Anyone can publish anything. There is no barrier to entry. So anyone is a publisher now. And in many ways that's wonderful, but it's also terrible. I mean, we have Pete Evans here. I haven't looked at Pete Evans' stuff for a while, but here he is now accusing mainstream media of pushing plant-based propaganda. I mean, you can see what I mean by nonsense. But nonsense sticks. Nonsense gets traction. So many people may not read what they believe in the Daily Mail, but on social media, I think it's a bit different. I think people are far too likely to believe what they read, with potentially disastrous consequences. And it could be argued, I mean, I don't know how much we can attribute the spread of misinformation about vaccination at the moment to the measles outbreak, but it is fair to say that we are still arguing about stuff that we should be just getting on and fixing, and that extends to nutrition. And there is an awful lot of pseudoscience out there about food and eating. And I think you know the stuff I'm talking about. It's things that sound to the average person, sciencey. It sounds science-ish. And it's often from people who have got a kind of a story which is, saying that they, meaning the science establishment, that they are really behind the times and that they don't want you to know about whatever theory it is that they are promoting. And I think there's a ton of pseudoscience on social media around wellness as well. You see #wellness. You only need to search on that to see what I mean. And there is emerging evidence, of course, that social media is having psychological impacts on people, and that's more and more of that coming out now, to show that that some of that content is not just funny and kind of cute or maybe a bit amusing, but it's actually damaging. There's evidence to show that time spent on social media can impact people's anxiety and depression, can manifest in negative body image, and can also have impact on even leading into disordered eating. There was an interesting study that I saw which showed that women who post Fitspiration images, I think you know the #Fitspiration, showed significant signs of disordered eating. So almost a fifth of those women were at risk for a diagnosis of a clinical eating disorder. So it's not just benign, and a lot of the damage, the psychological damage, is from people comparing themselves to what they see on the screen. I think there are some reasons why social media has had the power that it has, and it has wreaked this havoc on our media landscape, and it's wreaking havoc on science as well. And one of the things is that everyone's an expert. Like I said, there's no barrier to entry, so anyone can portray themselves as an expert, even when they are not one, or whether they have any expertise or not. The narrative is often just this simple thing of, it works for me, or it worked for me. And that is the story that a lot of the so-called influencers have. They're very much in that space. Another thing is that extreme stuff sells. Extreme stuff gets traction often. It's very easy to be exposed to this. This is a YouTube trail, if you like. So you can start with something benign. You can start with a search on vegetarian recipes. And it takes, five videos before you get to a 3-day juice fast. And that's nothing that you've been searching for. That's just what you are being served up because of the algorithms that you're being exposed to. So, as Sarah said, people want simple answers, and the pseudoscience people usually have them. Nuance is not your friend on social media, and neither is moderation. So this is how extremism spreads in politics, and it is happening in nutrition as well. The other thing is that social media encourages labels. It promotes labels. I mean, a hashtag is just a label, and everything needs a label, right? Everything needs a hashtag. So what that does is encourage division. It makes it look a lot like everyone is arguing all the time, because you have to be in a tribe. It becomes very tribal. I find this very interesting, but I think it's also potentially quite damaging. One of the things is that it makes it look like there's a lot of discord, particularly among experts. Like there's my diet is better than your diet. That whole thing is going on all the time. Another thing that it does is actually it gives the impression that healthy eating is somehow difficult, that it's maybe expensive, that you need to get special food from special shops, or that it's just really unachievable, and that is a real shame. I look at the label or the hashtag plant-based, and I think that is something that's quite interesting too. That has been adopted by people who are eating a vegan diet, but in fact there are a lot of ways of eating that are legitimately plant-based. I mean, what Jim was talking about this morning is a plant-based diet, and that tag should be being applied to all of those things because they have that in common. And I think that if we're going to solve those big problems that we've been talking about today, so the obesity, the diabetes, the climate change, then we have got to ditch the labels and we've got to start emphasising common ground. What can we do together? What do we have in common to solve these things? Social media is personal too. It's a very intimate medium. And I think we feel like we know people on social media even if we don't. And then that makes the idea of a personal recommendation very powerful. I mean, it's human nature that we do really value personal recommendations, and what we see from an influencer on social media, even if we don't know them, often comes across as a personal recommendation, and we tend to believe it. Influencers, I don't have time to go into all the stuff around them, but I am doing a talk at Auckland University on next weekend at the TEDx event, and so I'll be talking more about that there, so come along if you want to hear me rant about influencers. But just suffice it to say that influencers should not be a job, in my opinion. It is a job right now, but it's something that it is at the moment very powerful. So, I'm sorry if that all sounds really quite negative. It's possible that I'm a little bit more cynical today than I was when I first put this presentation together. But I do want to try and give you some ideas about what you can do. How can you use this force for good? Because I think it can be used for good. It is tricky though, and I apologise to those of you who are here who have heard me say this before, because I feel like I've said it multiple times over the years to people in public health. And groups of health professionals, but you've got to get out there. You have got to get out there with your messages, and it's even more important now because there's one less media platform that is giving evidence-based nutrition messages. So just keep going, just keep trying to get your message out there, get amongst it, go where the people are, because if you're not out there, your critics surely are, and if your messages are not out there, then there's no way they can get spread. You don't have to get into arguments. You don't have to get into arguments with people. It can feel like everyone's arguing all the time, especially on Twitter. Facebook, I find that too, a little bit, and it can be immensely frustrating. But you can actually just keep those messages positive. And remember the lurkers. You know, the people who are the most vocal and the most opinionated on social media are not the bulk of people. They're just the ones that are yelling. And there are a whole lot of lurkers out there in the middle, and they are the ones that you really want to speak to. I'm reminded of this often when people will comment to me in person about something that they've read of mine or they've seen of mine on social media, and they would never have commented online, they've never, not even hit the like button, but those people who are lurking are still taking in all those messages, and it's still having some meaning for them. So just remember those people and try and speak to them. And I think it's quite a good idea to be able to show and not just tell. I think that's hard for you as scientists probably to get personal, but actually if you can get a little bit personal and give some examples and show maybe something of your life, it does make people more able to connect. And I think, of course, there is a bit of an ongoing education job to be done, and that is in the area of just helping people understand what is science and what is pseudoscience, and also that what they're seeing on social media is not necessarily real, that a lot of it is curated content, a lot of it is paid for content, that there is a difference between real human connection and what is being posted by, say, an influencer. So I think, just to summarise, that it will evolve. I think that we will all get more savvy about what social media is good for and what it's not. And I believe and I hope and I pray that there will be a swing back to a desire for quality, curated, credible content. But right now, today, I believe no one really knows what is going on in media. And I think that if they say that they do, that they're probably bluffing. Social media in particular is a wild west, and it can be wonderful and it can be a great tool, but it can also be damaging. And unless we fight that, unless you fight that, then evidence-based messages about science might take a big hit.